Hi everybody, it's Franny, and in our last episode we went over the pros and cons of our lifts, and that kind of got me thinking, what does it take to set up a home shop in a home garage? I thought it'd be great to do an episode on that, and let's open it up in the comment section below. I want to hear what you guys have for your garage. Do you display your cars? Do you work on your cars? I think this is going to be great fun. As I mentioned in the last episode, we went over the lifts, but I left out a couple of important points. I forgot to tell you who makes the lifts and approximately what we paid for them. So these lifts are made by a company called Direct Lift, which I believe is owned by Rotary, and these are Pro Park 8, so they're 8,000 pound 4-post lifts, 110 volt. Now we paid about $2,000 a pop for these lifts, and people are like, oh my gosh, that's so much money. Actually, these lifts have paid for themselves. We've done so many repairs on the cars that would have been so difficult without the lifts that I believe we've saved enough money actually to pay for all of these lifts. So in the end, I think they've paid for themselves. The first thing I want to talk about is actually not a tool, it's the coating on our garage floor. So many years ago, almost 14 years ago, when we bought the house, we epoxy coated the garage floor, and it's been amazing. Now we used a kit from epoxycoat.com. It's 100% solids epoxy. You mix it up and you pour it out on the floor and you roll it and everything. It's kind of an interesting process, but it produced a beautiful surface on this garage floor. The reason why that's so important is that it allows you to keep your garage really clean. You can back the cars out, get the stuff out of the garage, you can power wash it, or you can hit it with a brush and throw some suds on it and really clean it up. And for me, that is huge. I hate working on a dirty garage floor because in the end of the day, you just end up as a chocolate Smurf, and I hate that. So if you're underneath your car, you got your car up on jack stands or whatever, and you're underneath your car rolling around on the floor, boy, if you've got a dirty floor, it's terrible. Next, I want to cover lighting. It's super important to get a ton of light in your garage and especially on your workspaces here. These are LED, so we don't have any problems with them flickering in cold temperatures, anything like that. They came from a company called superbrightleds.com, and I believe these are 50 watt, just sort of standard shop lights. They have great mounts on them, and we like them so much. We put them all over the ceiling, in fact, as well, because boy, they put out a ton of light, and we have several different types of lights in the garage because you have a lot of need for light and in different places and different types of light. Over the workbench here, we've got these shop lights, as I said. On the side of the wall over here, to get a little bit of light horizontally into the garage, we have these LED panel lights. They're amazing. They're only like that thick, and they sit inside the wall. Those things are wonderful. We've talked about the lights underneath the lifts here. So we have LED strip lights all under the lifts here. So it's a completely different type of light, but very helpful for seeing underneath the lifts. And also, if you've got these standard keyless fixtures that are up here on the ceiling that pretty much all garages have, you can get these incredibly bright LED arrays that you can add up there. And boy, they really do brighten things up dramatically. Really nice to have all that light. So the long and the short of it is that you really just need as much light as you can possibly throw at things. We actually had an electrician come out and wire all this stuff. I worked with him. We wired all this stuff up. We bought all the bits to save a little bit of money, and he wired them all up through the ceiling and ran a new drop for them. Wow, all this light makes a huge difference in working on your cars. And on the tail end of lighting, let's talk about electrical. You really want as much electrical wherever you can get it in the garage because it's such a pain to run a super long extension cords, and a lot of times that's probably not a great idea. These are drops from the ceiling. So because the electrician was up there working on the lighting, I said, well, why don't you go ahead and put in a couple of drops as well? And so he did. And this has been great because up on the lifts, we have all the cars sitting up on our tenders here. So we want to make sure that we've got power for all of that, and this is just a very convenient way to do that. It also works really well if you're like buffing a car or something. Power from above is so much easier to deal with than tripping over long extension cords. And finally, we have power where we need it. So we knew we were going to have the lifts in here, and we knew we'd have an electric car here, so we had dedicated outlets outlets that are close to those power needs. And of course, our tenders as well. And one additional thing that we did was a light switch for these panel lights on the sides. And we put a motion detector on it, and that becomes our new garage door light as we pull into the garage, because the ones are missing on the ceiling now, aren't they? And it's so nice when you pull into a dark garage to have the lights turned on, and this thing will detect it, turn on these side lights, and lights up the garage across. It's super awesome. So just some things to think about when you have the electrician out and you're like, gosh, we want to put all this stuff in. Just kind of think ahead of where you want light, where you want power, all those sorts of things. It's going to be huge for your new garage. Well, let's finally get to the workbench. My workbench is pretty basic. It's built out of 2x4s and particle board, really. I've had it for years in several different houses, and I've been able to adapt it every time. I like being in a corner here. It gives me a lot more room than just having a straight workbench. I think that's pretty killer. I've got the pegboard, of course, on the back. Everybody uses that to hang up tools, but I found that it gets awfully crowded very quickly if you have too many things up here, and I think I'm pretty close to too many things up here. But what I use it for are tools that I know I'm going to go to very quickly. Things like my lights here and these pliers and things. It's very nice to have these things here. I can just grab one really quick off the board. I don't have to go searching through my tools chest in order to find those. Another thing I did on my workbench, which I really like, is I put down, what this is actually a ceiling tile. So this is just very sacrificial. And the nice thing is that they're very soft. Anything you put on the workbench isn't going to get dinked up, beat up, busted up, because you've got this wonderful soft surface on here. And then before I start a new project, I put down some of this blue paper towel, this roll towel here down, and it's great to always have a nice clean surface when you're working on stuff. And then when I get done with my roll towels and they get kind of dirty, I pull them up and I fold them, each one of them, these are the old ones from last time, and I'll use them actually under the cars or whatever these things are actually for. So I get double usage out of these, because honestly, if I'm completely honest, these things don't last very long. They're great for like cleaning up stuff, but they fall apart pretty quickly. So you always want to have a lot of them. I think this is a great double use for these things. In addition to the actual workbench, I have these shelves I've put up. Obviously, it's where I mounted the lights as well, but it's where I keep sort of my sprays and cleaners and grease and that sort of stuff. Once again, easy access, easy to get to. Up a little bit higher are stuff I don't get to as much, the paints and thinners and stuff up there, and funnels and just things I'm not going to get to all that often. And some other storage of stuff that I just really don't have a lot of room for. So I'd love to be a little more organized here, but we just don't have enough wall space to have a lot of surface area and tall cabinets or anything like that. So as crazy and a little bit messy as this looks, it was 10 times worse before I got this guy. So this is a tool chest I got from you can get them anywhere. This came from Harbor Freight, and it wasn't very expensive, but boy, this has really changed my life. This is awesome. Before I was working out of toolboxes and you kind of had to open them up and get everything out. It's kind of a mess. These things are wonderful. You can lay out all your tools in here, and I've got screwdrivers in the top couple here, and then we move on to wrenches, and then down here into sockets and things. And then the lower drawers are great because they're bigger and they can handle all sorts of like your tool kits of things, like certain types of strange socket sets or whatever you've got, electrical equipment, that sort of thing. These things are wonderful. So a tool chest, if you don't have one, is totally something you should add to your garage. Down here, you'll see my tired old air compressor. I've had this for maybe 20 years or something, bought it at Home Depot way back in the day. It's just a simple pancake air compressor. Now the reason why I don't have something bigger is I found I really don't need it because I don't use a lot of air power tools in the garage. And I think, you know, this might be controversial, but I think it's a great way to break things. A lot of people wrote in when I was working on the Ferrari and working on the suspension that, oh, you should have used an air compressor, you know, big tool, ratchet tool, and take all that stuff off. Well, yeah, but you can also break things really easily that way as well. I don't know, that's kind of controversial, but I found I just don't really need it for the work that I do. So this thing is great. It's portable. I can use it to blow out the sprinklers. I can use it other places, blow up tires and stuff too. So it's really about all I need. And if you are thinking about air, something else to think about is, you know, there's a lot of very powerful electrical tools you can use now. Electric hammer drills and things, and they're even cordless. So they're way easier to work with than trying to drag an air hose around the garage. Another piece of tired equipment here is my bench grinder. And it's super old, it's really tired, but it performs a huge function in the garage here, I think. You can use this grinder for a million different things. Then also on the other side, you can either add a wire brush like this that works really great for cleaning rust and things off of parts, or a polishing wheel to just polish up parts and get them nice and bright. It's not a fancy piece of equipment at all. It's just one of those things that I use all the time. And you're probably looking at it going, what are you doing here? It is not bolted to the table, because I actually have it just clamped down, because I can take it off. I can use it outside for grinding the lawnmower blades and all sorts of stuff. Just works fine. And if I clamp it down good and tight here, it doesn't move on the workbench. There are a couple of small pieces of equipment that don't have to be fancy, but you're going to get a lot of use out of them. This bench grinder definitely falls in that category. Next, let's talk about jack stands and jacks. You're going to need an assortment of jack stands. These are the tallest and the highest jack stands I've got. These things go up quite a ways. One thing I do want to mention about jack stands is there was a recall on some of them, I believe sold at Harbor Freight and some of the other lower end jack stands. Leave a comment down below if you know about that. I heard it was pretty bad and the locking mechanism would fail on them. So if you know something about that, please let us know down below. I've never had any problems with my jack stands. They've been great. Now I do have a set of smaller ones, but they're currently being used to hold up the Ferrari that we're working on right now. In addition, I bought this thing here, which this is it's got an integrated piston in here, so it's got a pop bottle jack on it, and it's also a jack stand, and it's locking. So I thought this thing was going to be awesome because we can now jack up the car at the jack point and lock the jack. So that would be great. It's like a jack and a jack stand all in one. And kind of it sounded like a really good idea. Problem is, it's just a bit too high for our cars, so I've never really used it. If you've got a truck or a high SUV or something, I think this thing would be amazing actually. In addition to the jack stands, you're gonna need a good floor jack. This one works great. It's from Harbor Freight. It's a Pittsburgh. It's a 1.5 ton racing jack, but it's aluminum, so it's a bit lighter. If you've got a pretty heavy big car, of course, get one that's rated for the weight of your car, but this works great for our cars, and I actually have two of them. I use them quite a bit. I don't know, it's just a piece of equipment you kind of a must-have for your home garage. Let's talk a little bit about cleaning parts, because you're going to pull stuff off the cars and I guarantee you they're going to be greasy and grimy, and you're going to want to clean them before you put them back. So before, I was using just like a little plastic, little thing here, and I would probably use some brake cleaner and I'd wash the parts off. Kind of goes everywhere. Works a little bit, but it's messy and not that great, not that effective. So Heidi bought me this, and I mentioned this in a previous episode. It's something simple. It's just a tabletop Jegs cleaner, and it has a little pump in there, and it just flows cleaning fluid through here as you're cleaning the parts. You've got this constant flow here. These things aren't particularly expensive, and the fluid that I'm using in here is biodegradable, it's water soluble, it's not toxic, and it does a great job at cleaning the parts. This has really made my life a lot easier here getting these parts cleaned. And when you're working in the garage, you're wanting to be as comfortable as possible. So that's why we installed this bad boy. This is a 220 volt garage heater. This thing works great. It's got a thermostat, and check this out. It's even got a remote with it as well, so I can just come out here and set it. In fact, in the winter time, I set it to its lowest temperature, which I think is 50 degrees, and it keeps the garage at 50 degrees, so I don't have to worry about any of my chemicals out here, any paint. I don't have to worry about the cars. I know that everything's going to be safe from freezing. These things are wonderful. wonderful. They do a great job. But in addition to this thing, we did find one small problem, and that is that the top of the garage will get very warm, but the bottom of the garage will be kind of cold. So to fix that, let me show you what we did. We installed this guy, and it's really cool. It is actually a retractable blade ceiling fan. So I don't have these set blades sitting out that could contact one of the cars, so I don't have to worry about any clearance issues. It's hunkered up to the ceiling really well, and it does a great job at mixing the air in here. So in the winter, when it's really warm up there and cold down here, it mixes it all well. And in the summer, it provides a beautiful breeze as you're working on the cars. I love this thing. I don't think people would think about installing a ceiling fan in the garage, but this has been one of the best things I've installed so far. Let's talk a little bit about storage, because a cluttered garage makes it so hard to work in. You're bumping into everything, and piles of stuff everywhere just makes it a complete bummer, and you won't want to work in your garage. So one of the things we did that I think's been really helpful is to install these tire racks. So we got them from TireRack.com. They're pretty strong, and we also, in addition, I do have them hooked up to the ceiling. You can see with the straps up there, because I just, they're very strong racks and everything, but it just makes me sleep a lot better with those things actually attached to the ceiling as well. The racks themselves are installed, of course, into the studs, so they're about as strong as they're going to get. They are kind of high, but that's just our garage. We don't have a lot of extra storage space and a lot of extra wall space, so they had to be up kind of high. The one that's over here is kind of over by the lift as well, and it's actually pretty easy. You can get up on the lift and pull things down directly from that as well. In addition to that, you're going to want as much storage and shelving as possible. So here, come on over here and check this out. Now this has to be probably one of the craziest things in our garage. We've got two sets of shelving that are bolted to the wall and then chained on the outside to the ceilings. I literally have a sailboat strapped underneath them. They're incredibly strong, but this provides a huge amount of storage, and all the parts for the Ferrari that we're working on are up here. They're up and out of the way. I just don't need them on the floor where I'm tripping over them. It's easy enough to get up on a ladder, but if you've got a better solution in your garage, boy, I'd love to hear that down below. This has just worked well for us, but there's got to be kind of a better solution, because it is a little cumbersome to get the ladder out every time and climb up there, but certainly it's a huge plus to have everything up off the ground. Let's finish up talking a little bit about security and safety. In your garage, you're going to want a big dedicated fire extinguisher, of which we don't have. I have to admit, we have a smaller one. It's more of like a kitchen fire extinguisher. It's pretty useless for pretty much anything. I do have an element here that I keep here. This is looks like kind of like a flare really, but these things are kind of neat. They burn for a couple of minutes, and they will extinguish pretty much any fire. There are fire blankets. Those are always a great option as well. You can just drape it over. If your engine's caught on fire, you could drape it over the back of it and it'll put it right out. But we really do need a dedicated fire extinguisher. We need to have it somewhere where it's easy to get to, on the wall and mounted. So that's definitely a growth area for us. Talking about security, now if you've got some nice cars in your garage, you might want to think about security. You might want to have some integrated locks on your garage doors. That would be a good thing. Possibly some cameras or surveillance system. All those sorts of things are great things to think about. So I'm not going to talk too much about that, because it's a very personal thing for people and stuff you don't really want to give away. So you just don't want somebody breaking into your garage, and even if they don't steal a car, they could steal your tools, they could steal all sorts of stuff. It's not going to be a good day. A few additional notes. Now I already knew not to do any spray painting in the garage, but this surprised me. I painted a piece for the 308, the intake manifold, bright red, and I had it outside for a while, and I thought, you know what, it could get weird out here or rain or whatever, so I brought it in and I put it on the workbench and I just let it dry overnight, thinking, what harm could that be? Turned out I went and had to clay all 6 cars, and all the clay came back red. So the outgassing from the paint was amazing, got all over everything. So try to think about any contaminants that you have in the garage, from your cleaning solutions to paints, all that sort of stuff can easily migrate itself onto your cars. And if you are building a dedicated shop in your garage, one suggestion would be to get stuff out of the garage garage that doesn't pertain to that. So if you've got yard tools, if you're using your garage for storage, try to get as much of that stuff out as possible. You're just going to be stepping around it. It's just going to be in the way. And there's a good possibility that some of those tools could fall off the walls and hit your car. It's kind of a recipe for disaster. So I would suggest trying to get the area as clean and uncluttered as possible. One other thing to think about along those lines is don't store any food in your garage. That's a great way to get mice and rats in your garage because they're just going to come in, they can smell that stuff from miles away, and they're going to make little nests in your car. So you really don't want to provide a water source for them or a food source for them, and that has been great for us and has really kept the mice and rats out of our garage. Something I'd like to add to the garage would be a utility sink. I think we can do it inside in the mudroom so we don't have to worry about it freezing in the garage. But boy, that would be handy. If you've got those big parts and they're kind of dirty, you don't want to be out there with a hose trying to wash them off or traipsing through the house down to the washroom to use the sink down there. I think that would be a big addition. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and definitely leave your questions and comments down in the comment section below, but I want to hear what you guys do. What is it that you guys have in your garage? Because I'm sure I'm missing lots of cool stuff, so I totally want to hear what you guys have. Go ahead and light up that comment section and let me know. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. And as always, a very special thank you to our Patreon supporters. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that now. Hit the little bell next to it. Be notified. We've got content coming out on the Ferrari soon. We're getting some parts back, hopefully in a little bit. And we've got other stuff to do as well in the garage. All right, thanks again. And until next time, safe travels. Bye.